Good morning and welcome to this episode of Hometown Heroes. My co host Mary Staffel and I are really excited to have Christopher Wolff, a United States Air Force veteran with some incredible stories. Chris, welcome to Hometown Heroes.
Thank you for the invite.
It's good to see you this morning. I know that you had a late night last night. You and your wife Kelly were at the Jaguar game in Jacksonville, Florida.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
But the Jags lost.
Sadly, the Jags lost. Yeah, we had an injury to our quarterback in the fourth quarter, and we lost in overtime.
My goodness. Well, you're in sunny, balmy Florida where the temperature is probably about 60 degrees this morning. So it's not going to get too warm today in Jacksonville, is it?
It may warm up, but it's Florida. You wait about 10 minutes and the weather will change.
Yeah. They say that about Texas, too.
Chris and I met several years ago it was a Dallas Cowboy Combine where we had military and did all these different activities. I don't know if you went there or not, Mary. Roll Call had chartered a bus and we took some veterans over there. And I think that's probably the first time we met. And then we met again at ATF. And
Yep.
whenever we saw each other a few weeks ago, you reminded me of that picture I took there
Yep.
of you going across the wall.
Yep.
That was a long time ago. Was that whenever you were in the initial class?
That's correct. I believe that was either the initial class or the second class that I was in.
Okay. But there you're coming back over it. I swung around and then your daughter was there.
Yeah, yep,
And
that's my oldest.
she's getting pretty old now, isn't she?
Yep, she's 13 years old in 8th grade now.
My goodness. But our paths crossed back in November again whenever you came to Fort Worth, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But Mary, Chris is also an Air Force veteran.
Woo! My favorite.
Aim high.
That's right.
And you had a great Air Force career, didn't you?
I had a very interesting career. That's correct. It was always lively and always on the go.
A lot of deployments.
Yeah, total of 6, 3 to Iraq and 3 to Afghanistan.
And one to Antarctica too, correct?
That's correct. Yep. Deployment to Antarctica. That's correct.
That was a cold one, huh?
Yes, sir. It was a negative 30 degree with a wind chill factor of negative 30 as well.
How long were you there?
Actually, that picture you see right there is posted. We were there for 90 minutes. They had only seen light in 6 months at that point, and the time period for time lapse for light was 90 minutes.
So did you go down there just to take supplies or to pick people up or take people? Or
Yes, it's called Operation Deep Freeze, and the Air Force supports the National Science Foundation with their research and their scientists. And we fly and land on the surface. So it's a controlled skid, for better terms, to better understand what goes on. But as a C-17 in the background, and I was a flying aircraft mechanic, and our mission was to supply and resupply them with equipment and personnel.
Wow, what a great trip, huh?
Yes, sir. I actually got to walk with penguins in their natural environment.
You didn't have much time to do all that, did you?
No, sir.
Round them up quickly.
Yes, sir.
Well, you were inspired to join the Air Force because of 9/11, correct?
I followed my family's footsteps, so I was projected to join the military as a delayed enlistment,
Uh-huh.
and I graduated high school in May of 2001, and I was scheduled for the delayed enlistment program in January of 2002. And September 11th, I was my grandfather's graduation gift from graduating high school was a trip for me to go visit my mother. And while we were there, he said, "Hey, we're in Pennsylvania. Why don't we go visit family in New York?" So we scheduled a trip, and on our way over on September 11th, 2001, we were crossing over in from New Jersey into Staten Island, and I looked over. My grandpa showed us the beautiful skyline of Manhattan and pointed over to two beautiful buildings that were over there and said, "Hey, tomorrow morning we're going to be there for breakfast." And I got up the next morning late. My grandpa is normally an Englishman, and he's very prompt on time. We got up late that morning, and we were on our way down from the subway to the harbor to aboard the ferry to go across towards Battery Park, and we watched both planes hit the World Trade Centers that morning.
So you were actual eyewitness to it. How incredible!
Yes, it was. At first, I'll be honest with you, it looked like a movie scene. It looked like a huge pyrotechnic. I was like, "Oh, we're gonna see." Like just inside, it looked like a movie, like you had seen, like explosions and that kind of stuff. But after seeing the second plane hit, you knew that it wasn't something that was intentional.
My goodness. And I guess the rest of that day was just chaos.
Yeah, we went back to the house and collaborated what was going on, because obviously everything at this point is in disarray. We're actually the Island was being covered by the dust that was going over from the harbor and across the thing. And later on that evening, we joined a candlelight vigil and walked the streets with some of the family members who had lost members that morning.
Mm.
And the best thing I can say is America became the best America they had been, and we all became family again, and we felt like we were American all over again.
We were united.
Yep, yep.
And so, when did you go into the Air Force? Did you wait and go ahead and lay the entry in
So
January?
So that morning, after September 11th, I made a phone call that evening after the phone lines were open. I made a phone call to my dad and my mom to let them know I was physically okay, because at that point we didn't have internet like to be able to hop on and quickly give responses. And I made the third phone call was to my Air Force recruiter, and I told them I wanted to prove what red, white, and blue was to the people who did this. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to get back to you because right now we don't know what's going on." And about a week later, I got orders projected for me to join the military on October the 10th of 2001. So literally almost 30 days to the date of September 11th, I stepped on the soil at Lackland Air Force Base to start my military career.
My goodness. And you went to basic at Lackland, and then what was your duty after you got out of basic?
I got sent to training up at Shepherd Air Force Base to become a C-130 crew chief. From there, they sent me for hot training, which is where you work on the aircraft that you're going to work on at Little Rock Air Force Base, where they start tearing apart the aircraft. And while I was at Little Rock, I got a set of a welcoming package. And on the outside, it said Specken Sie Deutsch. And I found out I had orders to Ramstein Air Force Base, Germany.
Tough assignment.
It was so
neat place.
It was so horrible.
Yes, absolutely. No one should ever go there.
Especially an 18-year-old.
So you went there and started actually doing what you were going to do. So were you a ground mechanic then, or
Yes.
Then
So at that point, I was an aircraft. So I would inspect the aircraft, change tires, change windows. There was nothing on the aircraft I didn't touch. So that's what I was doing. So I was an apprentice learning how to fix the aircraft daily, to the point where I was hopping on with other shops in other fields, mechanics from the jet mechanic shop, and our electrical departments, and our explosive ordnance departments, and that kind of stuff, where I learned further tasks that eventually transitioned me from being a ground mechanic to a flying mechanic, which flies with the aircraft.
okay? And that was on a C-130, correct?
Yep. Yeah, and Ramstein had at that time. Now they have J models, but at that time they had E models, and they were dated back to pre-Vietnam and Vietnam aircraft.
Okay. Yeah, I just flew in a J model just a couple of months ago, so
Yes.
it was a good adventure. I hadn't been on a C-130 before.
Oh,
I sat right next to the parachutes. I didn't know how to work them, but I was going to grab one before anybody else could get one.
hey, be prepared.
So you from Germany, you made your first deployment.
Yes. So while we were there, Iraq kicked off. I was actually in Ramstein, and we were given orders to go grab some supplies to move them from Grafenwehr, Germany to Lille, Iraq. We picked up the first ID, and while we were inbound to Lille is when we got the notification that we had officially made conflict with Iraq, and within, I'm talking probably minutes of that announcement, we started taking flak. And it ultimately looked like a scene you would see in D-Day that they would show you on a movie. And we're flying over in C-130s with, not a whole lot of protective measures to fight back. And we landed the first ID out of Grafenwehr, Germany, into Tallil, in which that was the first wave from Ramstein to start the conflict.
Did you get hit with any flak? The
No,
aircraft?
sir. No, at that point we were high enough and flew over it, so none of it actually affected that aircraft. It was my first experience with a combat experience. I mean, obviously they tell you you're gonna see these things or possibly go through these things, but that was my first interaction. Most of the time, I think the biggest thing I ever had happen to us is somebody threw a rock at the aircraft, or we took small ground fire from somebody when flying around, but that was about it.
Okay. How did you stay there very long that time, or?
No, we were probably there maybe an hour total. That was from the point of dropping down, unloading, and then moving supplies to other locations.
Okay. And then went back to Germany, and where'd you go
Yep.
from there?
So from Ramstein, I went back to working on my duty job. So at that point, we were supplying aircraft. So I would fly that same mission back and forth. We were doing that for multiple months, and other forward operating bases, to also include some of Afghanistan at that point. And I would just keep flying around. So at that point, we just continued on, like it did, our mission went on. So every night we were doing 24-hour operations, flying in and out of Ramstein. So I would hop on planes when they would need them to be either fixed, or they needed a crew where they were going to be spending an overnight. So at that point, that's what I was doing. After that, we went back to kind of regroup after getting all of our aircraft back. They had sustained some damages and back and forth, some of them. So we had to come back with some of our aircraft, and we went back to fixing the aircraft. While I was there, the Air Force found that the wing spar inside the fuel tank system was cracking. And the Air Force looked at what the cost was to repair them, and the time, and it was 100 man hours for each wing box. So the Air Force came back and said, well, we've gotten a lot of hours out of these aircraft, and we're going to go ahead and decommission these aircraft. Well, when you decommission those aircraft, when you take one airplane away, that means that you have extra personnel sitting around, because that doesn't match the number of people needed to fix that. So the Air Force said, well, we have to downsize here in Ramstein, and I was part of that list, where I was going to continue on. Instead, I've got orders to another short tour. Well, this is a long tour in Ramstein. I got orders to Osan Air Base, Korea.
So from one place to the other place around the world, huh?
Yes, sir. Literally.
And did you make some more deployments?
I actually, while I was there, is when the tsunami happened in Thailand.
Okay.
And so I got forward deployed from there to work on catching aircraft out there for the tsunami relief and the humanitarian aid that was there. And after that, my duty assignment was over. After my 1-year tour to Iraq, or to Osan Air Base, I got orders to McCord Air Force Base.
Okay. So you were flying a lot and moving around a lot.
Yeah, yep. In a matter of 4.5, almost 5 years. That's how long it was from that point from starting in Ramstein to me being in Osan, and then me getting orders to McCord Air Force Base.
After McCord, did you make some more deployments?
Yeah, so that'll be where I did the last 3. So in between, I did Iraq, Afghanistan when I was in Korea. Then I did Thailand, and then I did 3 more additional deployments to 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq, for my total of 6 that I did. But I flew around with them, and my last deployment was in 2008 to Afghanistan.
And were you still with the C-130s?
No, I had actually moved on for another airframe that the Air Force has, and that's the Boeing C-17.
Okay.
Where the best way of explaining what's the difference between a C-130 and a C-17 is if you looked at the aircraft, the C-130 is the Air Force's Pinto, and the C-17 is the Air Force's Cadillac.
This is nice, huh?
Yes, sir.
Somewhere about that time, did you have an accident where you fell and injured your legs?
Yes, sir. So in that process in 2007, I was given orders, correction, 2007, 2006. Let me get the date correct on this. 2006, I got orders to do Operation Deep Freeze, and that's that picture that you were showing where we were in Antarctica.
Uh-huh.
That picture literally was 24 hours before we went back to New Zealand in Christchurch, where I was doing an aircraft inspection, and I climbed on top of the aircraft to inspect for ice. I opened the escape hatch on top of the backbone of the aircraft, and when I stepped out on the aircraft, I stepped on the tang of my Gore-Tex pants and fell off the airplane, falling 25 feet, breaking my tibula and fibula in my left leg.
My goodness, that hurt, didn't it?
Yeah, yes, sir. When I fell, I had no idea what was going on. To be honest with you, it felt like a slide going off the aircraft because I was on my back. But when I came off of the curvature of the aircraft, that's when my forward body flung forward, and I thought, okay, well, if I could brace for this, I could be fine. I figured it'd just be like jumping off like a swing, but a little bit higher. And when I came down, I planted my left foot, and that's what took most of the blunt hit. And then my right foot, which sustained a small fracture, but not enough for it had to be casted or plated. And when I came down, I put my hands in front of me, and when I did, that's when I landed with my forehead onto the concrete.
My goodness. And that recovery was about a year or so
Yes,
before
sir.
you were back
Literally,
to
yeah. So 2006 to 2007 was my recovery from learning how to obviously have a broken bone, 2 surgeries to correct it because the surgery in Christchurch. So I had surgery in New Zealand, where then they flew me home in a commercial aircraft to get back to work. And while I was there, the pressure from the flight, the 12-hour flight from New Zealand back to McCord Air Force Base or Seattle, the screws that they had put in had backed out, so I had to have another surgery a couple months later to correct that.
My goodness.
This does not sound like any fun at all.
I can tell you these moments weren't fun, but the flying that I did and the people that I met and the missions that we were on and the humanitarian aid and the people that I met that were just so happy to see that were Americans that were there to help better the situation that was there, made this situation, even though it sounded horrible and all this stuff, like even breaking my leg in New Zealand, the problem that we found in the Air Force from why I fell off the aircraft and what we were able to change in the future, even though you look at the scenario itself sucked and it hurt and it was painful, what we did and what happened from the situation was way bigger than what the situation was.
Yeah, as it always works out that way, but it doesn't take away from how painful that clearly sounds. But
yes, ma'am. You know, in the Air Force, we have what we call Air Force standards.
Yes.
And actually, in the Air Force standards, it actually named me specifically for one of the changes that happened.
Let's fast forward now.
Gotta learn somehow.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, let's fast forward to the other thing that happened that really was a life-altering change for you.
Yes, sir. So on my last deployment to Afghanistan, being an aircraft mechanic with C-17s, we were on our way from Afghanistan, flying around doing daily missions, and we were doing what's called a combat corkscrew, where we come in for a tight turn for landing, and upon going through, our aircraft was hit by an RPG. And instead of detonating in flight, my pilots were very skilled. Were able to put the fire out, and we came home with one dead engine and flew all the way back from Afghanistan. I was happy to be home, and I kissed the ground. And we went after I was finished. We did our recon, where we get some time off in between our deployments, but then we go through what's called a redeployment line, and that's where I dropped off my deployment gear and got my active duty gear. So I got back to my normal duty schedule, but at that point I'm already preparing for my next deployment. And while they do a records check for you to make sure everything's correct, like you're up to date, and they also do immunizations. And that day I was administered a flu vaccine. And that vaccine's a live virus, so they inject it into your nose. I didn't think anything about it. All of us do the typical thing, which is to blow it out. Like, that's just what our response was to it every year. And I'd had this same series shot for 8 years at this point. and I didn't think anything about it. And 19 days later, I woke up paralyzed from the neck down from this vaccine.
And what was the vaccine? What was it doing to your body?
So at this point, it was attacking my spinal cord. It had it infiltrated my spinal cord and was eating away what's called your myelin sheath, which is the fatty tissue that covers the nerves on the back of the spinal cord. And eventually, it worked its way up into my brain, creating 42 lesions.
And that was indeed a time in your life when, I mean, the prognosis was very dim for you. I mean, they were telling you couldn't never walk again.
Yes, sir. So the morning that I felt all of this, that my body was shutting down on me, the best way to explain it is being, from the computer world of like your computer going into safe mode where everything's working, but it's way slower. And I didn't know how to process that. So I went to the hospital and I went over to Madigan Army Hospital where they picked me up from the emergency drop off, put me in a chair and had me do multiple tests with a blood draw and a urinalysis sample. And after getting my results back, they came back and said, "Hey, you have a huge white blood cell count, increased white blood cell count," and I knew what that meant. So they had me sign paperwork for a lumbar puncture. And while in the process of doing that, they weren't able to actually withdraw fluid from my spinal cord to find out what my body was fighting off. And they had signed me up the next morning for an MRI to find out what was going on with my body based on that. So I went home and went home the next morning, was scheduled for an MRI. They sent me home with compazine, which is a antipsychotic medication, but it's used as a huge form for like extreme cases of nausea, because that's what I was dealing with at that point my body was just fighting off what was going on. So I laid in bed, went to sleep, got up the next morning, thought everything was perfectly fine for me. And I rolled out of bed. And when I rolled out of bed, my legs followed with me. And I thought nothing wrong with it. But the moment I went to stand up, I collapsed. And I knew something wasn't right from that point on. I army crawled myself into my living room where my ex-wife found me laying on the floor for this appointment. She had come back for me. And we called the ambulance. And I was transported from my house to Tacoma General Hospital in Washington State. And I was told at that point that they were trying to figure out what was going on with my body. And within hours or minutes, I don't know the time frame on this one, because this is where they decided to put me in a medically induced coma to stop the progression of what they were seeing what was going on. They put me in an MRI and they were watching slowly the virus go up my spinal cord, eating slowly and killing off function to the point where they finally found those 42 lesions on my brain.
How long were you in the coma?
So I came to, so November 18th is when I was put in the medically induced coma in 2008. And I came to on December 23rd of 2008 in an ambulance. I woke up and I was like, "What's going on?" And I asked my ex-wife what was going on and had we made it to the hospital yet. She says, "You've been in a hospital for 33 days and you were in a coma, and now we're transporting you to a rehabilitation hospital." And had told me everything that was going on, and they wheeled me from the gurney into the outpatient room. And just as I was laying there, couldn't move any part of my body. I had a tracheotomy that was providing ventilation for me to breathe. And just as I was laying there, a doctor rolled in a wheelchair. He was a paralyzed doctor himself. And he told me that my prognosis was that I would never breathe, eat, walk, or ever do anything on my own again.
Wow.
At that point, were you then quadriplegic then? I mean, you couldn't move anything?
So yes, at that point I was classified as a C5 quadriplegic. I wasn't able, the only part that I was able to move very slowly was my neck from side to side.
And so then you started the rehab, and did things start working again?
So I went through range of motions every morning, trying to get through different things in occupational therapy and speech therapy, working through getting the tracheotomy taken out so I could function because I was able to start breathing on my own, steroid therapy. And then they started doing electrical stem therapy. and about the whole process altogether was about 2.5 years. But one morning I lifted my left hand off the bed about a quarter of an inch, and I knew from that point on I wasn't going to be who this doctor said I was going to be. Yeah. Yeah. I laid in that hospital bed. I was 25 years old. And when I got those words that I was not going to be able to do anything on my own, it was a huge pill to swallow. And I honestly, I fought internally. So like that morning when I lifted my left hand off the bed, I was fighting inside, telling myself to do something more. There's more to this. There's more to than just laying in a bed, being turned every 2 hours so you don't get a pressure sore. There's more to being Hoyer lifted into your wheelchair so you could take a shower. There's more to this than what you are doing right now. And I didn't want to be a burden to someone in my life at this point. And there was a moment during that period where I contemplated suicide. I thought if I could, and I looked down and I could see a PICC line to my heart, and that was providing antibiotics and medication and pain management. And I thought, okay, if I could just rip this out, I would end my life. By the time they realized that I had done this, I'd already expired, and I wouldn't be a burden to someone. And thankfully, I didn't have the physical capability to do that, because all I could do was turn my neck and not even like reach down any further. But that's about as far as I could go. But that morning when I lifted my left hand off that quarter inch of a bed, like a new light in me ignited, that I knew I could do more than what this doctor said I was going to be.
Thank goodness. God had a hand in that, I think.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I do all things through him.
Yeah, I believe that.
You've done a lot of things that the doctor said you'd never do.
Yes, sir. So, being in that hospital, I eventually got to the point where they were sending me into physical therapy twice a day, getting me so that I could sit up on my own and get more function and more control. When I left that hospital, I was able to push myself in my own wheelchair with no movement in my lower body. And so at that point, I was put in an outpatient instead of an inpatient. I was put in an outpatient rehabilitation center where I would come in and I would do therapy on appointments. And they started doing electrical stim on my legs, and I started seeing some progress in lower movement. But I, from that point on, got introduced to a gym in Dallas by the name of the Adaptive Training Foundation. And I was actually in Dallas for the VA wheelchair games. And while I was there, my coach said, "Hey, there's a gym here that my sister goes to, and I'd like to take you there for you to see that there are other programs out there." And I was like, "Oh, cool." So I rolled into this gym in Dallas, and I got met by let's just say a very tall individual with lots of muscle that looked like he could just strangle you with just like one squeeze. And I didn't know what to do. I go to find out that he's a ex-Seattle linebacker, and he had opened a gym in Dallas, and we were talking about what had happened to me and like just what what he had done. And he said, "Hey, I'm going to get you up on a trampoline. When's the last time you jumped?" And I'm like, "Well, I can't physically jump right now." I was like, "Well, I've got a harness and I'll put you in it, and I just want to see what what your body can do." And I was like, okay. So he put me in he lifted me up. We put me in a harness system that was strapped to the ceiling, and put me on a trampoline. And he had me just put weight pressure down on my legs, and he pulled down on the strap of the harness and got me starting to bounce on this trampoline. And I had never known what this feeling like at this point. Like I'm in my rehab, and I didn't know what to do with this. And we started doing more and more physical change of motions. Getting different pressures on each side. He was giving me different.
Uh-oh.
Sorry. There you go. Eric, sorry about that. And then he asked me about when was the last time that I closed my eyes and did anything with this point. And I said, my biggest worry about closing my eyes is I'm going to fall and hit the ground. And he goes, "I want you to know this, that you will never fail if I'm here with you." And I was like, okay. I got to that point where I started bouncing on this, and I closed my eyes, and he grabbed me. And the moment that I closed my eyes, I fell backwards. And I was almost about maybe what to me felt like an inch from the ground of hitting my head, but ultimately probably was like a foot because my eyes were closed. And he repeated to me again, "I will never let you fail, and I will never let you hurt yourself." And so we started getting more into this to the point where I was doing bouncing And when I left that gym, I was bouncing on that trampoline higher than just putting pressure on my legs. And he introduced me to what's called the Adaptive Training Foundation and said, "Hey, ultimately I would love to have you in my course here as one of my adaptive athletes." So I went back home, and at this point, I'm living in Colorado with my wife. And I found out my wife was pregnant. She was pregnant on the trip with us, and we were at the house, and she went into labor, and I went back to the hospital. And after 3 hours of her being born, he called me and said, "Hey, you got a chance? Are you sitting down?" And I laughed with him. I said, "Hey, I'm always sitting down." And he goes, "I want to let you know. I want to let you know you've been accepted to the class in January of next year for Military to the Mountains for Class 5 of the Adaptive Training Foundation."
Nice.
Adaptive Training Foundation really changed your life, didn't it?
Yes, sir. So the best way I can explain this is I rolled into the gym in January, and in the end of March, I was standing up using forearm crutches.
Wow.
We've had several of the Adaptive Training Foundation athletes, and there's a couple of them right there.
Oh, yeah.
This just a couple of weeks ago, and there's Keith Murphy and Randy Nance,
Yeah.
and
Great
that was a good reunion.
Yes, sir, it was. Yes, sir. Each of those athletes I've been through a class with and have seen not only our own physical limitations go through, but our outreach has grown as well, because now at this point we're ambassadors for the Adaptive Training Foundation as a tribe, but we are also inspiring those around us, not intentionally. And that's the thing about this. Each one of us, we're just living our life. But what we've done through this program and the limitations that we have pushed back or pushed past allowed us to show that there is more to life than what the doctor says that you're going to be.
And you are all an inspiration to so many people. I mean, I get inspired every time I'm around you or Keith or Randy or any of the others. So you are absolutely an inspiration.
Yeah, Randy and I in 2019 competed with a nonprofit, Operation Enduring Warrior, and we were able to trifecta in the Spartan in 2019 together.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Randy is got to be one of the most competitive people on earth.
Yes, ma'am.
He's just absolutely amazing.
And there's another person that is an inspiration to a lot of people, and that's Susan Allen. And
yes,
we are doing some therapy with Susan. I guess this was at a golf tournament, and Susan was taking tickets and tearing them apart, and you were helping her. But Susan, I don't know how she does it. She every time, just about that I've been to ATF, she's there with refreshments. All these other organizations, she's donating her time and energy to make a difference. So she's a dear friend to you and me for sure.
Yeah.
And she is certainly an inspiration to anybody out there in the volunteer world. So Susan, thank you for doing all the things you do for all our friends.
Yep. Thank you, Susan. Susan and I's friendship has grown over the years. My first introduction with ATF with her and an event was small at the gym, and she would come and volunteer and get involved. But our biggest interaction with her was Carry the Load one year. And we were walking. Well, she's walking through the night, and I'm with another buddy. I'm in my chair, and I'm with another buddy who's blind, a blind Marine amputee. And we're walking through the middle of the night and going back and forth doing the carry load for the honoring the fallen that weren't there for us for Memorial Day, and we're going down this path, and we're both exhausted. We're at this point. I want to say it's like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and at that point I had connected my assist device to my wheelchair. And my arms are toasted. I'm like, we've been going back and forth for hours, and she'll tell you that we were going, and I put my assistant drive on, but in the process, I think I fell asleep. So
Oh, no.
she's chasing after me as I'm almost launching myself out of this wheelchair using this device.
Oh.
But no, it was cool to arrive back in November to that golf tournament to see Susan and immediately help her start pulling apart raffle tickets and that kind of stuff and pick up where we had left off many years ago. It was just like nothing had changed from that point on.
Absolutely. In the golf tournament that you came to, it's Freedom Mobility Golf Tournament. And here's another person that is a great inspiration to so many people. I know that Mary worked under his leadership, but that's Major General Kevin Pottinger. He's the retired. He's the founder of Freedom Mobility. And Chris, I think that several years, 10 years ago or something, you met Potts on an airplane, didn't you? Or
yes, sir. Yeah, it had been quite some time. I was traveling from one event to another, and was sitting across the aisle from Kevin at the point, and he had told me about who he was and what he'd done in the military, and we just had a conversation about my story, and we talked with each other about what the future looked like and that kind of stuff, and then parted ways. Didn't think anything about it. We had a scenario on the airplane he was able to help me out with, and help me process through, and we were able to do that together. But then didn't think anything about it. And about 7 or 8 months ago, he got connected to an organization called the Rewalk exoskeleton robotic system, and there was one of the employees that works for them, and she was talking to him about looking at getting medical equipment, and fundraising for medical equipment. And she said, "Hey, I know somebody," and she started telling my story. And he asked if his name, if that person's name was Chris, and she said, "Yeah." And she goes, "I've met him before on an airplane many years ago." And our connection together grew from that day, even though we didn't know that our paths would cross again.
And because of that connection, Kevin was instrumental in getting you from Florida to was it New Braunfels where
Houston?
Okay, Houston.
Houston, yes.
Okay.
So what we've been looking. Go ahead.
So you could be evaluated to see if the robotic exoskeleton rewalk would be good for you.
Yes, that's correct. So the robotic system requires a trial, and the trial is to get you into the unit and see if it's something that would be beneficial or they would actually see that would be helpful for you. And I've been working with the VA trying to get this trial to happen, and there's just some red tape has been happening, and Christy from Rewalk called me and said, "Hey, this is an opportunity in Houston. If you're able to make it, to be able to do this trial, and it's going to require a flight, it's going to require a hotel, it's going to require these things." And I was like, "All right, I will do whatever's possible." And the foundation came to me and said, "Hey, we would like to cover your flight and your trial to be able to do this process." And that happened in May of this year. In 2023, I flew out from Florida to Houston, Texas, and I was able to trial the Rewalk system. The name of that Rewalk system his name is Will, and I got up that morning and didn't know what it would look like or what the results would be that morning. So at this point, I'm I've done physical therapy, I've done electrical shock therapy, I've done training at the Adaptive Training Foundation, and I'm trying to grow further in my walking process. And I didn't know what the outcome of this would be. So I showed up clear-minded of like, hey, I'm hoping for the best, but I don't know what's going to happen in the outcome. We stood me up in the Rewalk system and at Spiro Physical Therapy in Houston, and we started walking around the room, and we were seeing a progress that I had never felt before. And the therapist was seeing the progression go the way it was going, and she made a statement of, "I wonder what he would do if we went outside." So I just immediately made a left turn and went out the front door. Didn't even give them I'm one of those people in the world, like, you only know what it's going to be like if you try.
That's
And
right.
we walked outside, and I got out of the rewalk and sat down. And Christy from the rewalk asked me how I felt after I had walked with Will. And I told her I hadn't had this feeling in 14 years. And she's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, it's been 14 years from my injury, and I don't know what this feeling feels like because I haven't had that." And what it was being in a wheelchair. I sustained a lot of pressure on my lower back and my legs, and I deal with spasticity from the misfiring communication from my brain to my muscles. And that day, I didn't feel my lower back pain, and I did not feel I didn't have any signs of my spasticity. And from that 45-minute walk session, I was able to continue that for multiple days. 3 days on lower back pain, and spasticity went away for almost 4 days.
And this is a picture of Will
Yes.
sitting down, I guess. Will
Yes.
sitting down.
Yeah,
And
that's Will.
what I'd like to do is just play this. This is probably the third time that you use the system.
That's
And
correct.
so we're going to play a little video. This was at the Freedom Mobility Foundation golf tournament, November the 12th. And here you are getting ready to stand up. And that's Christy behind you, and that's your wife to your side.
Yep, that's correct.
And Christy, she just kind of holding on because once you get using this all the time, you won't have to have somebody give you the assistance like that. But
That's correct. Yeah. So the ultimate idea is to, with further training, is that unit is for me to use and have a standby support with somebody that's there with me, but not supporting the way she is at this point. This is my third time in this unit, and I'm learning more and more as I go. And this is what we were able to do the day of the golf tournament.
that's just remarkable. And then the night before you were in the unit, and you stood up for probably 15 minutes or so
Yes, sir.
talking that day. And here you are standing up. And then the sound's not real good on what you're saying or what Chrissy's saying, but
Yeah, the standing there, you can see that I have barely any pressure on my arms, so I'm sustaining all of my weight while standing there with very minimal support. The unit is holding me up and being able to provide what I didn't have before prior to this, and that's stability and control.
and where we're at in the process of you being able to have one is in the fundraising process.
That's correct, sir. Yes, sir.
These units, as you can imagine, are very expensive, and we're raising funds now, and you can make a donation through Freedom Mobility Foundation. And I've got their website down below. But tell us some of the things that you want to do. And I think your dream is to be able to walk down the street with your family.
Yeah, ultimately, I have 3 children, and I always have to go in my wheelchair next to them when they're riding their bikes or walking them down to the or going down to the sidewalk to grab the mail. And ultimately, my first ultimate goal is to walk my kids down to the park and come back with them while going. And you can see in this video that it may seem slow, but this is in the training mode. This is controlled speed and that kind of stuff. So you're able to control the speed that it goes and the stride to make it go faster. So you'll see in this video, a lot of people ask that question. It doesn't seem like it goes fast. No, this is just the setting that it's currently at. But ultimately, my goal is to walk with my kids, to spend that moment of walking down the street with them and being a part of their life that, they haven't seen in me. Like my children have grown up seeing me in a wheelchair and have seen me stand up, but and walk very short distances with forearm crutches, but being able to continue on like this and transition from concrete to grass like that. Like for me to do that from my perspective using crutches would be a long process. I'd probably be 20 or 30 minutes just for that very small distance that you saw in the first video.
That's amazing.
And you have a couple of daughters, so whenever you get this unit, you'll be able to walk them down the aisle.
Yes, sir. That's the ultimate. When you talk about goals and you talk about yourself, like what do you see yourself doing, in the ultimate, and that's ultimately what I see myself, is being able to walk my daughters when that time comes down the aisle as their dad, to represent that I'm giving them away to somebody who deserves them as a second person in their life, not their first. And but ultimately that's the goal, is to be able to do that for both my daughters.
That's remarkable. And I hadn't checked lately where we're at on donations, but the units are, extremely costly. So
yes, sir, they are.
If you want to help Chris fulfill his dreams, fulfill his goals with one of these rewalks, just visit Freedom Mobility Foundation at freedommobility.org. And that's just one of the units that are one of the mobility devices that you've used, and this is another one. This is called the Solo Rider.
Yes, sir.
And you're gonna get one of these at the Armed Forces Bowl. You're gonna be presented a Solo Rider, and also there's another veteran. His name is Jake Murphy. He's a West Point graduate. I think he's Special Forces. Works for Lockheed Martin. He's a double amputee. And he's going to be also getting a Solo Rider at the Armed Forces Bowl. And for you that don't know what a Solo Rider is, it's a golf cart, and the seat swivels out, and it kind of puts you at just about the same position that you would be in if you were able to stand up by yourself. And I want to just play a real brief video about Jake and the Solo Rider. So
I get asked this question all the time. Like, so what do you do now? I'm like, well, what choice do I have? My name is Jake Murphy. On July 23rd, 2011, in Iraq and Afghanistan, I hit an IED, and it resulted in loss of both my limbs, one below the knee and one above. I tried playing around in golf without assist devices, and it was impossible. Luckily, I was fortunate enough to be gifted a Solo Rider from the Freedom Mobility Foundation, and I can certainly say this will be life-changing for me.
that's an incredible mobility device. And thank Hunter Clark for doing that video for Freedom Mobility. But at the Armed Forces Bowl, we'll be presenting you and Jake both with a Solo Rider. And
Yes,
with a Solo Rider, you're going to help some other veterans, are you not?
Yes, sir. That's ultimately what it is. And that's what I've always looked at doing, is whatever it is that I like get accessibility to or am introduced to, or it's more about not just the single picture of me. It's about the bigger picture of what this can do to be an impact, not only in my own life, but those around me. And ultimately would look at like creating a golf program out here, or accessibility to people who are also paralyzed, and not just in the veteran community, the word disabled across the board, because yes, I'm a disabled veteran, but I interact with disabled people. I play wheelchair basketball here in Jacksonville for the Brooks Rehabilitation Ballers, and I know multiple players on the team aren't military affiliated, and I would love to have them, to give them access to something that they wouldn't think they'd be able to do. And I think that this device not only opens it up for me, but it also opens up for people that have never even known this device was available, and being able to allow them to borrow it, or to go out with me, or that kind of stuff, to be a part of that, is what the bigger picture is about. It's always about that. It's not just about what I do. It's about what we can do to make this a better world.
And you just hit on a good point, Chris, and that is, not everybody with a disability is a veteran, and they don't have the same exposure to a lot of the foundations that the military and veteran community have. So, that's really great to reach out to them and share some of the things that you've been blessed with. So,
yes, sir. Yeah, and that's the thing about that is I've been introduced to so many other disabled people, and we don't know that the programs are out there. That's the first thing. So being able to be an advocate for those programs is one thing, but at the same time, being able to provide the adaptive device, if it be my Freedom Grit wheelchair, which is a hand crank wheelchair, which allows you to go in outdoor locations and that kind of stuff. To being able to be involved in these programs like wheelchair basketball and being an advocate, but also the solo rider. That you think about this concept of, okay, it's a golf cart. Okay, it's been adaptive for people who are amputees, people who are spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, so it can control them from becoming equilibrium issues. And it opens up so many things. But what it does is it opens up to a field that doesn't even know about it. You know what I mean? And they hear about it or they'll see it in a magazine. Now we can bring it closer to them and allow them the accessibility to it without it being a huge cost. So that, that initial cost for this unit is continuing to pay off in many, many ways that I can't even put in for words, or the expressions you see on people's faces completely change. And that's what it's all about. I mean, my wife and my family, we call ourselves the Wolf Pack. And that's, being my last name is a wolf, and that's what we are. We're always growing our wolf pack. And and that's because our reach is more than just what's right in front of us. And our reach is reaching other people, but contacting other people and getting them contact with other people to change not only our own lives, but those also around us.
Because there's a lot of people that need help.
Yes, sir.
And there's a lot of people that need to hear your story and the stories of others, because it would have been real easy for you to just give up.
Yes, sir. And that's the thing about this. Like, I don't try to personally inspire. That's not my ultimate goal. Like, I don't get up every morning like, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to find that person that was out there, that's out there now where I was at, fighting, trying to figure out what to do in life. What purpose do I have? What fire, what drives me? What gets me beyond where I'm at right now? I know a doctor says one thing and those are huge pills to swallow. Obviously it's based on research. It's based on all of this stuff that goes on in a prognosis. But the ultimate answer is the only person that can change you is you. You get up every morning, you are the person that's in your life that has to, that's involved with this. But the biggest thing it comes down to, the only person that's going to get up and make that difference is you.
That's right. And one thing you just touched on, you said that, you don't get up every day with the goal to go inspire people, but the inspiration comes as just a byproduct of you living your best life.
That's correct. And we were talking about earlier that ReWalk system has the name of will. And I was talking with Christy, and that concept that we've come up with, if there's a will, there's a way. And that's and my family and I have adapted that concept of, if there's a fire for you to find it, let's continue to fuel that fire, even if it's not your own personal fire. If it's something that you're seeing somebody, I mean, the biggest thing in the adaptive world, you find out that the first introduction to an adaptive sport changes that person's life. It may not be that sport that they continue on, but they start to realize, like, my first adaptive sport was mono skiing, in the mountains in Washington. And I never thought, like, hey, from sitting in a bucket, bombing a mountain out in the middle of the freezing weather would get to me where I'm at right now. I would have told you were crazy. But what that does is that small lit fire that you give them in a seed allows it to blossom into something to change not only themselves, but also those around them as well.
And it's just a, it's a individual event to be able to get to where you are. I mean, you have a lot of people along the way, a lot of organizations, a lot of foundations, but it's all up here.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's all right here in your heart and your mind. And we've Mary and I have been so blessed through this podcast to be able to bring other people with different circumstances in life that, it's kind of a crossroads where they made the decision, I'm not going to go down the path of self-destruction, and I'm gonna raise up from these terrible things that have happened, these situations, and respond to them and make the best out of them.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and my family have, like not in a joking concept, but the concept of is when you deal with these things in your life. I got introduced when I was a kid to a UCA Bruins coach that was talking at like the last moment of a championship, and he was talking about the situation they were going through, and there were injuries that were on the field, and he was talking about the concept was like tough times don't last, tough people do.
That's
And
right.
and that's a huge concept to take in. But like my family and I have trying to look at what that situation looks like as personally, and I've changed it to the concept of using those words in a way that makes more sense to me. And it's tough is the situation, not the outcome. Yes, what I faced is tough, but what it made me in the end is nowhere near where I was in the beginning.
Man, you're a tough guy, because the first time I saw you at the combine, you were in a wheelchair race and you were hauling butt. And then,
yes, sir. That was so much fun.
I was looking at your Facebook page yesterday, and you've done some incredible things. The mountain climbing and just things that normal, everyday people like me can't do or don't do. But you're setting the bar pretty high. Let's just talk about your family for a second. This is your wife, Christy, on the right, and no,
Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly, and then Christy from Rewalk is in the white coat on the left.
Yes,
and then you have your 3 children.
Yes, sir.
And you are in the Rewalk here, and it says "Gone Walking with Will" on the wheelchair.
Yes, sir.
But it's going to be good to see some video of you walking down the street with your children.
Yes, sir. And that's what I'm trying to do. My children, if you look in this picture, like this picture represents a lot, and not only for what the wolf pack looks like, and even this case, Christy is part of our wolf pack. What this is showing is my children have found out, like being around people with different ailments and disabilities, and even if they're physical or emotional or ones you can't see, the scars you can't see within, my children have a different respect for those. I mean, a lot of their adaptive athletes and friends of mine, they call them uncle because they're around them enough, and they start to feel that they're part of their own life. But like my first interaction to what I did had an impact. Like you start to look at what you do has an impact. That like you can see it on paper or somebody tells you, that's fine. But seeing it directly in front of you was one of my children was talking to another disabled person, and a kid came up and they were having a conversation with both of us. And the one kid said, well, talking to me, said, hey, I can see that you have an injury from your military service. But what the other disabled veteran sitting next to me, by perspective of what he looked like, there was nothing wrong with him. And the little boy said to her was, well, I can see what's wrong with you and what you happened in your service, but what happened to you? And my daughter literally said, hey, you don't know what that person's dealing with. You probably shouldn't ask it that way. And I was just thrown away. Thrown away that my daughter could put through this perspective of what's going on. And she explained, like she told my buddy's story because she had heard it enough. But it was cool for her to see that what she does, like we're nobody different. Nobody's different than anybody individual here on this earth. We're all human beings. And she was able to represent that as a child from the teachings that we had taught her from her uncles and aunts that she had been around, that maybe this isn't how we ask this question. And she was able to give an education lesson to another child because of the things that she learned. And I think that's what's cool when you start looking at what you do in your life, the impact that it has not only personally, but also in your family and those around you.
Certainly, your children are going to have a great impact in later years, just from being around the people that you associate with and the other veterans and the other people that you interact with.
Yes, sir.
Well, Chris, our time's about up for today, and we're so honored and so pleased that you were with us today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you probably on the 20th. When are you going to come in for the Armed Forces Bowl?
We'll be there the night of the 22nd, and we'll be there for the 23rd. That's correct.
Okay. Well, then I'll see you hopefully the night of the 22nd, but for sure the 23rd.
Yes, sir.
And again, It's Freedom Mobility Foundation is where you can donate to the rewalk, or you just make donations to Freedom Mobility. So it allows that organization to help other veterans and other first responders that have mobility issues. So, Chris, thank you so much. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being an inspiration to us all.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. And we will see you very soon
Yes,
at
sir.
the Armed Forces Bowl.
Yes, sir. Go Air Force.
That's right. Go Air Force. See?
They were playing in the Armed Forces Bowl, so you'll get to cheer the Air Force along.
Yes, sir. Go Air Force.
That's right. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Mary, another incredible guest that we had today.
That's right. And, I think that he brings out a lot of the things that if we can help work through, that will lower that suicide number, because you can imagine somebody in his case when he said, if I could just pull this out, then it'd just be over. I wouldn't be a burden. But, man, the difference that he can make in some lives by still being here. And we've got a lot of vets that unfortunately choose to go the other way. And we've got the only way to fix that is for them to find purpose. And you can hear in his voice how purposeful he feels. He feels like he has something to get done. And that's what all human beings need. We need to feel purposeful, or we just wither away. So
Absolutely.
Man,
we're so blessed to be with the people that we get to hang out with and be with, and outside of the podcast, but in the podcast we seen some incredible human beings.
Yeah, we sure have
overcome so much.
Wow.
And we are blessed and by being part of their tribe.
Yeah.
We're part of the Wolf Pack now.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. There you go.
And Christmas is upon us. Sunday this is the Holidays and Heroes, the gift giving at NASGRB Fort Worth. Our friend Carrie Ortegal and her team of volunteers. Let's see. We got to meet the new skipper. I haven't met him. You met him before.
Yeah,
but he was there, and let's see. But had a great day of giving gifts to the military families at the Joint Reserve Base, and then some of the other outlying reserve bases. We were able to bring some of the even some Army people in, besides just the Marines, the Air Force, and the Guard. So
yeah, well, and I think it's really cool to see them now including doing something special for the single military members that are living on base, because a lot of people don't maybe realize that it's a Joint Reserve base, but there are a lot of active duty members of all of the branches, and many of those do live on base in the dormitories, and so they don't always get considered and thought of. And I thought it was really cool to include them. And so we got to see some friends that we had made along the way of going to the dining facility once a month. And those guys utilized the dining facility too. So you look across at how it touches so many lives, and interact with the folks that are out there receiving those gifts, how much of a difference it makes, and how much they can feel the love. So it is a neat event. And we got to bring Don out there, and Don got to see it himself.
He sang a different song beside the God Bless America.
Yes, he sang White Christmas. Yeah.
That was special to have him out there. And, there was about 200 volunteers that did things all along the way, because, to get the gifts from Carrie's house out to the base, all the people that were working at the base, directing traffic, just a whole host of people that give for that. So
There are.
great
Lots.
job, Carrie.
Yep, absolutely. Can't say enough.
Go ahead.
Can't say enough about what Carrie and all of the volunteers that she has to do. They're just amazing people.
And I was down in Granbury Saturday afternoon before the bringing of the gifts at Carrie's house, and I was at the Elizabeth Crockett chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution because our good friend Liberty Phillips was the guest speaker, and part of that, Liberty, they gave her a medal, and then Carrie and her family was there, and they presented Carrie with a medal also. So
very cool.
A big weekend. One thing while I'm thinking about it, our friend Liberty Phillips with Bridge to History, we've had her on several times. She has these children that she takes to Normandy to study D-Day, about 5 or 6 at a time, and they become ambassadors for Bridge to History. But Liberty is going to take some of them to Arlington National Cemetery for the Wreaths Across America, and she's reached out to me to see if there were some people that maybe have some airline miles they could donate to Bridge to History in order to help a couple of these little ambassadors. They're 8 to 12 years old. Be able to make the trip. So if you've got some airline miles you'd like to donate to a very good cause, the Bridge to History, where we teach, or Liberty teaches the young children about history, just reach out to me or Mary, and we'll kind of get you hooked up with Liberty. But she did an outstanding job telling her story at the DAR. Another thing we have coming up is the Fort Worth Memories Bike Drive. The last day to give bikes is the 15th. That's coming up real soon. This is through Fort Worth Memories and Larry O'Neill, and you'll see his contact information here on the screen. Again, I think his goal this year is 800 bikes. So that's going to be the 16th of December at Farrington Field in Fort Worth. And then the Wreaths Across America is also the 16th. The DFW National Cemetery, we had Larry Allen on last week talking about the Wreaths Across America, and that's a huge undertaking, 30 to 50,000 wreaths. But there's some other local cemeteries. If you can't get out to the DFW, I know that the Acton Cemetery down by Granbury, where Elizabeth Crockett's buried, David Crockett's widow, they have a very nice program, and the local cemeteries in your area will be doing that also. So a lot of things coming up. Roll call, of course, is this week.
It is this week. It's
so
Friday.
Tell us what we're going to do. We're going to have some entertainment.
We are going to have some entertainment. We've got quite a bit of stuff going on. So we'll have a couple of entertainers. The Silver Sisters, which is a USO style group. They're going to put on a little show. We're going to have Brad Thompson, who I think Brad, I think it's this Wednesday. Maybe it already happened. I don't know. But he performs in other places too. And he'll be performing some songs besides the one that he generally does when he makes the luncheon. So he'll do some more songs there. We've got a little presentation we're going to make to somebody. It's still a little bit of a secret, so we won't talk about it till next week. But we'll be doing that. And though you can't RSVP on the internet anymore, that closed officially. But we've had a few cancellations. So if you are desperately wanting to come to a luncheon, maybe you've never been, you want to join us, you need to email us at info@roll-call.org. And manually we can get you added in. But right now the site is closed because, of course, we turned in numbers yesterday to Brenda. So with all of that, we do have those couple of seats that have come open. and I hate to ever make it empty. So if you are interested, please do let us know at info@roll-call.org. And it's going to be a really neat event. And we won't have another one till the 4th Friday in January.
It's a long way.
We're all going to be desperate to see each other again, like it is when we go from June to August without a July luncheon. So come on out, enjoy the entertainment, enjoy the program, and be in the presence of just great Americans.
Another thing we have coming up in December is on the 23rd of December is the Armed Forces Bowl, and Air Force is going to be playing James Madison University. It's an afternoon game, and veterans and military can get their tickets by going to armedforcesbowl.com. There's a place where you can order tickets. They'll have they call it a veterans village. It opens up several hours before the game. And then there'll be a lot of different nonprofits that help the veteran community there, have some entertainment, and probably, the C-130s from the 136th had been talking about doing the flyover, but they were having to wait to see if Air Force was going to be in the game, because they thought if Air Force is going to be in the game, probably F-16s, F-35s, F-22s, or maybe all three of them will do a flyover. So it's going to be an exciting game. We'll have the flyover. I think the all veterans parachute team will be coming down into the stadium, and just have a lot of things to honor our veterans, a lot of presentations. The Purple Heart, usually there's 150 Purple Heart recipients that come out on the field to be recognized during halftime. So there's just a lot of things going on. The day before, on the 22nd, if you have a chance, I'm not sure where to get the tickets. I usually go through one of the foundations to get tickets, but there's an Armed Forces Bowl luncheon, and they have both teams there. The coaches both speak, and it's a good luncheon. And then the next day, of course, is the Armed Forces Bowl. A lot of things happening, even in December.
Yeah, busy.
A busy time. So just remember, here's Roll Call's website again. And we just are so grateful for Chris being our guest today, and hope that we can help raise some money for the rewalk, and help raise money for some other needed funds for mobility devices through Freedom Mobility. Mary, thank you so much for being here today, and being the great person you are, because you stay so busy helping others, and you do take a little time yourself because you go to school all the time. So that's just about over, and
that's almost over. Yay!
Just a few more days, right?
A few more. I got really. By the time some stuff makes sure it posts today at noon here pretty shortly, I'll be down to about 1 or 2 more items to check off my to-do list, and then I'll be done. So 3 out of 4 classes here pretty shortly are going to be completely in the books, and the last one will be done, and just a couple of things to do.
A lot of hard work. Yeah. Congratulations. Oh, that's just in your makeup, is doing hard work. I tell you what.
I'm ready for part to be done. But I did burn up all but 1 month of GI Bill benefits. So
that's pretty good.
That was the goal. I couldn't give them to anyone, so I may as well use it.
You've got more degrees than a thermometer.
That's right. That's right.
Well, thank you so much for being part of Hometown Heroes, and we'll see you next Tuesday. God bless, and God bless America.